The Minnesota Timberwolves are headed back to the conference finals for the second consecutive year. We'll talk about how they did it, leaning on their superstars. We'll break the whole game down next.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Beacon. I'm the host of Locked On Wolves. Happy Thursday, everybody. The Timberwolves are back in the conference finals. It's the second straight year, just the third time in franchise history. Obviously, only the second time, or the only time they've ever consecutively advanced in the playoffs to the conference finals. And really, it's only the third year ever they've even won a playoff round. So all that stuff, it's incredible. It's crazy. Chris Finch continues to just, I guess, raise the bar for this team, and, kudos all the way around. Today, we're going to focus specifically on this game. I don't want to get too big picture here, but I think it's important to remind the audience of all those things and just how special this is for the Wolves, that they're now a consecutive conference finals team. And now, it's time to make the next step. We don't know yet who they'll play. It's going to be Denver or Oklahoma City. That series goes to game 6 here, I believe, Thursday night. So we'll, of course, keep an eye on that and talk about it as we get closer to the conference finals. Today, though, I want to talk about game 5. We'll talk about how the Wolves did it. We'll talk about another really great Julius Randle game, another fantastic closeout game for Rudy Gobert. Of course, Ant was awesome. The Wolves overall, despite some sloppiness, which we'll get into as well, I thought were very impressive overall. Obviously, some things to clean up as they go to face either Denver or OKC in the conference finals. A big thank you off the top here today for making Locked On Wolves your first listen. Of course, you can listen anywhere. You can also watch on YouTube, and you can watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on both Roku and Amazon Fire TV. All right. So we could just go down the line here. I mean, this was pretty much a blowout throughout. I know Golden State got it down to, the Wolves had it up to 21 late in the third. Golden State got down to 9 in the fourth quarter, and then the Wolves pushed it back up to 14 immediately with a quick 5-0 run, and I don't think it got below 11 or 12 after that. This was pretty much a blowout, through and through. Golden State never led by more than 1, and that was very early in this game. It was nearly a wire-to-wire win. You look at the box score and what jumps out, and we're going to dig into this a bit. The Wolves shot just an insane 62.8% from the field in this game. They shot 41.9%, so 42% on threes. And they dominated the paint, 72-50. But they also really struggled in some pretty obvious areas that I was worried about coming into the series. They turned the ball over 20 times, which was kind of a theme in this series as one of the things the Wolves were doing well in spite of their turnover issues. I believe this was the third straight game in the series that they've had 19 or more turnovers or something like that, or maybe it's even 20 or more. I'll pull that up here. But that just continues to be a problem for the Wolves. And so they won in spite of that. They allowed Golden State to attempt twice as many free throws as them, which we can get into why that could be. But the Wolves shot 15 free throws. Golden State shot 30 free throws in this game. And yet the Timberwolves still ended up winning by 11 points, and again, led by 20 plus at various points in the second half. So the other thing is they gave 18 offensive rebounds to Golden State. So another category in which they were completely dominated, and yet they still won by a very comfortable double-digit margin. The turnover number, I was right about that initially. They had 2 games ago in game 3, the Timberwolves had 21 turnovers. In game 4, they had 21 turnovers. And total in this game, they also had 21 turnovers. They had 21 turnovers in each of the last 3 games, which is just way too many. Now, of course, it helped in this game that Golden State turned it over 17 times themselves. So that certainly kind of canceled out a lot of the Wolves' miscues and points off turnovers. It's not like the Warriors were gangbusters there. In fact, it was pretty even in terms of points per possession off of turnovers. So just running through the categories, that would jump off the page. What was most notable to me was how impressive the Wolves offense was when they weren't turning the ball over. The ball movement was really crisp in this game. Ant had some bad moments in terms of just his handle looked a little bit off tonight. There were a couple of kind of early Jaden McDaniels possessions where he was a little bit weirdly aggressive. Just a handful of possessions here and there, but for the most part, nearly wire to wire, the Wolves offense was actually really impressive. The biggest problem was the sloppy turnovers in the backcourt. It happened off of rebounds. It happened there. I think they had, Jaden McDaniels had 2 turnovers after getting defensive rebounds. Like in the backcourt, like basically, 90 feet from the Wolves basket. They had multiple turnovers like that. They had, in transition, Reid, Dante DiVincenzo, guys just being sloppy with the basketball on the open floor. But the half court, when Minnesota actually got their offense set up, the turnovers weren't nearly as bad in the half court. They weren't nearly as frequent. And I thought that the movement was really good. Like they had crisp ball movement. The Warriors were aggressively doubling. The second quarter looked a lot like the Lakers series, and that's when Rudy Gobert had his big kind of moments in this game. He was, I think, 5 of 5 at halftime. He finished 8 of 9 for 17 points. 17 and 8 in a closeout game for Rudy after he was dominant in the closeout game against the Lakers. And I do think there's something to the, obviously, the defensive strategy and the desperation level that the Lakers had in game 5 and now the Warriors had in game 5, where, hey, we're just going to seriously blitz Ant on the perimeter. Golden State was even blitzing. I think it was start of the fourth quarter. They put 2 on Mike Conley, and they forced a turnover. Like they were just all over the place trying to create this high variance game because they knew that was their only chance. And to the Wolves' credit, in spite of the turnovers, they got a lot of clean 3-point looks because of the Warriors double teams. And so I also think, I don't want to say it's the Wolves' credit, but I think it's important that we remember the context of just how aggressive this defense is. It's a little bit like, and it's not the same, it's better than this, but the first Chris Finch full season prior to the Rudy Gobert trade, which was the year they got the 6th seed. They played Memphis in the first round, took the 3 seed Memphis to 6 games, which, by the way, was the only series that the Ja Morant Grizzlies have won in the Ja Morant era. I remember when people thought he was better than Anthony Edwards, and it was never the case. I know there's a lot of other stuff going on there, but I shouldn't say never the case. He was better than him before a lot of the other stuff happened with Ja Morant, but now it's not close, right? Like Ant is just a better player. I don't want to turn this into that conversation, but I digress in a big way here. But the point is that Wolves team was undermanned defensively. This Warriors team has Draymond Green. They have Jimmy Butler. They've obviously got defensive pieces. That Wolves team was trying to create a high variance game. They were trying to blitz pick and rolls. They were trying to get turnovers and go the other way because they didn't have a half court offense that was going to be able to score with any efficiency, any regularity at all. And the defense didn't have a rim protector and was reliant on just being fast and athletic and young and creating a higher variance game against, when they were usually the underdogs. That's basically, on a really simplistic level, what Golden State was doing. They don't have a traditional rim protector. They don't have a lot of size. Yes, they have some very good individual defenders in Jimmy Butler and Draymond Green, but they're both better as team defenders, especially at this stage in their careers, each of them. So what did they want to do? They wanted to put 2 on the ball. They wanted to shoot the gaps. They wanted to be aggressive in trying to turn the Wolves over. And they did it to the tune of 21 turnovers in each of the last 3 games. However, they still didn't score enough off of those Wolves turnovers. And it's the same reason that the Wolves did this several years ago with Chris Finch at the helm, pre-Rudy Gobert. It's because, as I mentioned a minute ago, there just isn't enough offense. And especially if you're going to get what Buddy Hield have, 8 points on 9 shots, didn't make a 3-pointer in this game. If Jimmy Butler's only going to shoot the basketball 11 times, he didn't get the line 11 times, but Butler only ended up with 11 field goals in the box score because all he did was get fouled. 17 points on 11 shots for him. Like, if you're not going to get offense anywhere else, you have to generate it in transition. And so that's what the Warriors are trying to do. So I want to give that context and remind everyone that, like, yes, the Wolves turn it over a bunch, but the Warriors are playing a really high-risk defense. Now, the Thunder do the same thing, but they're just a lot better at it. And they're also very good in the half court, and they're not fully reliant on forcing opponent turnovers. Like, that's something we could talk about. If the Thunder ends up being the Wolves' opponent in the conference finals, Denver's obviously a very different defense, but that is kind of the thought process behind what Golden State did, and that's at least in part why the Wolves ended up with so many turnovers. So yeah, turn it over 21 times is not ideal. It allowed Golden State to get out in transition a bit. They ended up with actually just 7 fast break points, Golden State did. So a lot of these turnovers, it's not like the Warriors did a whole lot with them on the other end. And honestly, like, the Wolves defensively, I thought were really good. I know Golden State ended up with 110 points. It's because they had an absolute free throw parade, but Minnesota held them to 43% from the field and 28% on threes. I thought Minnesota's half-court scramble was really, really good, and also scrambling to get back in transition. We'll talk about the Wolves' defense. I also want to talk about some of the Wolves' individual performances that I mentioned kind of in passing at the top. We'll do all that here next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our friends at WayFair. The days are getting longer. That means the weather is warming up and people are spending more time outside. It's the perfect time to refresh your outdoor space. Whether you're working with a big backyard or perhaps just a small balcony, WayFair has everything you need to make it feel more like you. Wayfair's massive selection of outdoor essentials makes it easy to transform any space into your ideal summer setup. From comfy conversation sets to sleek dining tables and outdoor decor, they've got it all, and at prices that fit your budget. Grab a brand new patio dining set. I mean, this is the perfect time of year for it. Great patio weather. Maybe it's some string lights. I recently added some string lights from Wayfair for my patio. It was a fantastic decision. Maybe extend your outdoor space a bit further into your backyard. It's also a great ad for a balcony or a deck or what have you. They also at Wayfair offer a ton of different styles. No matter what you like, you can find pieces that match your vibe without spending a fortune. And trust me, their delivery is free and hassle-free, even for the big stuff. Shop a huge selection of outdoor furniture online. This summer, get outside with Wayfair. Head to wayfair.com right now. That's Wayfair, WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. All right. I want to finish what I was saying a moment ago about the Timberwolves defense. Again, don't pay attention to the 110 points necessarily. I mean, this turned into a free throw fest in the second half. There was a lot of grifting going on. Our guy, Brandon Pajemski, only ended up getting to the line 5 times, but he was trying to get like 3 times that many free throws with the amount of flopping he was doing. And credit the Warriors for being aggressive on the glass. They had 18 offensive rebounds, but there was a lot of, touchy stuff late that kind of kept the margin right around 10 points. So the 110 points is not indicative of how good the Wolves defense was. I mean, Golden State only had 47 at halftime. They had 25 or less in each of the first 3 quarters. They had 38 in the fourth quarter when they went to an even more high variance, double Mike Conley in the perimeter and get to the free throw line and all this stuff, launch threes. And they put Quentin Post out there to launch some threes. And he was 1 for 4. And, that was how the Golden State ended up with 110 points, but they were pacing to score under 100 again headed into the fourth quarter, which they did in the first 3 games of this series. Minnesota in transition, I was actually very impressed with how the Wolves got back. And I know they've been very good at that all season, but in this game, I thought it was really, really impressive how they got back and got matched up in transition and limited like trail 3 opportunities. Not the Warriors have a ton of guys that shoot those, but limited what the Warriors could do on the fast break and in semi-transition, secondary break opportunities. And then in the half court, like Golden State was moving the ball pretty well, and the Wolves were recovering. They were Xing out to contest shots on the perimeter. They were, cycling down to help protect down near the rim. I was very impressed with how the Wolves handled themselves defensively in this game. And that to me was something that's good. It's certainly going to fly under the radar because of the individual performances we'll talk about, because of some of the issues in terms of turnovers for Minnesota. But I thought the Wolves defense was awesome. Before we finish with like all good stuff, I want to hit one more kind of negative thing or thing to look out for that we'll certainly come back to as we prep for the next series. Coming into this series, obviously before the Steph Curry injury, what were the things I was most concerned about? We talked about some of these things on Wednesday's show in prep for Game 5. One of them was certainly turnovers. Remember, I've said this so many times over the last week and a half on the show. Golden State was number 1 in the NBA in forcing opponent turnovers post Jimmy Butler trade. They were also the number 1 defense overall in the NBA post Jimmy Butler trade. So we're talking 3 months to play now. The Wolves were terrible at turning the ball over, especially the first few months. They were one of the worst 5 teams in the league, and they finished like 16th or 17th in the NBA in turnover rate as an offense. I was really scared that was going to be a big problem in the series, and it was. It's just with those Steph Curry, the Warriors just didn't have the ability to do anything with that advantage. Right. The defensive glass was another area. It's not like the Warriors are monsters on the offensive glass, but I had some concern that, again, the high variance play, these athletes, those long guys, the Moses Moody's and Kevon Looney's and guys they could throw out there, Trace Jackson Davis's, they didn't end up doing really any of that. It was, and Kuminga I would throw in that same group. Kuminga is like the only guy that played like real minutes over the last couple of games from that group. And, the Wolves gave up 18 offensive rebounds in this game. Minnesota did not have a second chance bucket until like midway through the third quarter. And that was a big part of what Golden State was trying to do. Now, obviously, Minnesota shot lights out, so that's why they only had 6 offensive rebounds themselves. But that's something that, both Denver and OKC are good just good rebounding teams, full stop. And we'll talk about that depending on who the matchup ends up being. But that has been kind of an on and off concern throughout the season for Minnesota, and that was an issue in this one as well. The same issues we came into the series being worried about, but ultimately it didn't matter, in part because of how well they shot the ball offensively, and also, related to the turnover thing, how well the Wolves did, how good they were at getting back in transition and matching up, I thought was really, really huge. Let's talk about Anthony Edwards. Anthony Edwards was really, really good in this game. I know he turned it over 7 times. There were a couple bad ones, but like grand scheme of things, 22, 12, and 7 in a closeout game, 22 points on 15 shots after really struggling with his 3-point shot, going back several games now. He was 5 of 9 in this game, only got to the line once for 2 free throws. That was like midway through the fourth quarter, which was kind of crazy. He was 5 of 9 on threes. I guess he was only 3 of 6 on twos in this game. There was one that he got clobbered on like third quarter, and I was just absolutely shocked there wasn't a foul call, and Randle ended up cleaning up the offensive glass anyway, so it didn't matter. But I thought it was weird that Warriors shot 30 free throws and Ant had 2 and the Wolves had 15 as a team. Ant was phenomenal in this game. He probably threw more lobs than we've seen him throw in a single game, anecdotally all season long. He found McDaniels, he found Gobert. There was the one play where he broke down the defense. I think he had pods on his back and kind of lost the dribble with his right hand, got it back, and he could have dumped it to Gobert or to McDaniels for the dunk. They were on the dunker spots on either side of the rim, and Golden State was completely broken down, and he threw it to McDaniels for a dunk that led to a Warriors timeout. This was, I think, late third quarter. Ant was actually really good at passing quickly out of the double team. In the first half, there were some big moments where he passed out of it. There was a Mike Conley 3 when he got out of the double team. That was big. Actually, he had one of those in the third quarter as well, and we'll talk more about Conley. But handling that blitz, other than there was that like moment, I think it was early fourth quarter, where he turned it over and then he immediately turned it over again. He just lost his dribble at the timeline. Like, that was obviously really bad. Throw out a couple of those plays, and this was a near perfect Anthony Edwards game. He also had 3 blocks, too, by the way. 3 of the Wolves, 4 blocks in this game. So 22, 12, and 7. 3 blocks and a steal for Anthony Edwards. A plus 20 in a game they won by 11. It was very, very good. And his decision-making is nearly impeccable. In fact, the turnovers in this game for Ant, I bet if we go back and look at all 7, and which I have not done yet, recording this like right after the game, I bet only like 2 were on passes. It was his loose handle. And it was just some dicey, again, Warriors pressure. But the decision-making was nearly perfect for Anthony Edwards. Knowing when to try and turn the corner, or knowing when to try and split the double, knowing when to get off the ball quickly and rotate it around the perimeter, knowing when to just dump it into Gobert. I think there was one that he tried to rifle a pass to Gobert in the middle of the defense, and it got knocked away because it's just a tough pass to complete. So there were some moments like that. But by and large, the actual decision-making that Ant made with the ball in his hands was nearly impeccable, and led to his 12 assists, which is, I think, his previous career playoff high was 9. And to see him have 12 assists, and he wasn't really scoring until the fourth quarter either, which is very similar to some of the other games in the series. But the overall Ant performance is very impressive, and like I said, nearly impeccable, nearly perfect in my mind from Anthony Edwards. He wasn't the only one that was sloppy, and he also wasn't the only one that played great. Julius Randle was both of those things as well. Julius had 29 on 18 shots, 13 of 18 shooting for Julius Randle. He had 8 rebounds, 5 assists. He also had 5 turnovers. So, I mean, the two of those guys combined, Randle and Ant, for 17 assists and 12 turnovers, not exactly the ratio you want. But again, when you also combine to shoot 21 for 33 from the field and 7 for 17 from 3, you can handle that. Also crazy, Randle and Ant combined for 3 free throw attempts. 3 free throw attempts. Julius Randle attempted 12 two-point shots and got 1 and 1 opportunity. And it was in a fast break opportunity where it was McDaniels threw like a bomb down the court to him in the fourth quarter, and Randle made it and got the end one. That was the only free throw attempt Julius got, despite shooting 12 2-point field goals in this game and really playing bully ball all night long. Julius Randle's play, again, it was just a revelation. The ability and the willingness and all of the above to just go into guys' chests and make them feel you. I know last game, I think he got called for one charge. I don't believe any of his 5 turnovers were offensive fouls in this game. He had a travel that nearly was an offensive foul in an open floor situation. But Julius and Ant, in spite of the turnovers, which, as I explained earlier, like a huge part of that is the way the Warriors were choosing to play, which also put them at a disadvantage in other ways, other places, which is partly how Minnesota shot the 3 so well in this game, because they were getting off of the ball in these double teams. If they weren't turning it over, they were getting an open shot, and more often than not, they were making the open shot. And that's how we end up with a 21 turnover game that still has Minnesota leading by 21 in the fourth quarter and winning by 11. I want to talk about some of the role player performances. Mike Conley, Rudy Gobert, both fantastic. Jaden McDaniels, really good. Dante DiVincenzo showed up to the party. Finally, he was fantastic. We'll talk about all those individual performances and put a bow on this conference finals clinching win. The second round, I guess, whatever. The birth of the conference finals that was clinched with this Game 5 win. We'll put a bow on all of that here next to close out the show. All right. So we talked about Ant, we talked about Randle. They were both fantastic. I'm not really doing studs and duds. Nobody played poorly for the Wolves in this game. So I'm not doing the traditional studs and duds. I'm just going to talk about each of these guys individually. Rudy Gobert was fantastic. He was 5 for 5 at halftime, did a lot of his damage in the second quarter when the Warriors were initially super aggressive, doubling Ant. And I mean, Ant just straight found Rudy for a couple of dunks. There were also some plays where it took a couple other passes for the ball to find Gobert. But for Rudy to be 17-8 and finish 8-9 in a closeout game, he only played 28 minutes. The Warriors looked like they wanted to go hack a Rudy in the fourth quarter, which frankly would have been fine by me. With about 5 minutes to play, Finch pulled Rudy. He ended up I don't think he came back after that because he didn't need to. And Gobert ended up only playing 28 minutes, but he was really, really good. 17-8 in 28 minutes is awesome. He was a team high plus 21 in a game they won by 11. The Warriors had no answer. Obviously, the Wolves will have a size advantage over the Thunder, at least in terms of girth. Like, we're talking Chet Holmgren, we're talking Isaiah Hartenstein. Like, there's some guys with size and length on the Thunder, but Rudy will have an advantage, as we've seen in the past couple of years against them. That'll be the case once again. And then, of course, we know what Denver offers, and that is probably Gobert only guarding Jokic individually, only sometimes. And, again, it worked well in the regular season. The Wolves went 3-0 against Denver, and, of course, beat them in 7 games in the playoffs last year with Towns instead of Randle. But it's a different challenge than the basically centerless Warriors and Lakers teams, which I still find it really interesting that the Warriors or the Lakers with Jackson Hayes and the Warriors on some level with really Trace Jackson Davis, to a lesser extent, Quentin Post, who did get one start. The Warriors just said, screw this. We're not going to start a 7-footer. We're not going to play a 7-footer. We're going to start him and then bail on it. That's what the Lakers did too, and it didn't really work out. So a different challenge as the Wolves take on either the Thunder or the Nuggets in the conference finals. Mike Conley, best Mike Conley game in a long time. And you kind of knew this was going to happen at some point in the playoffs, and hopefully there's more in the tank for Mike. But for him to show up and have 16, 8, and 6, I mean, like, we could look at his game log, and when's the last time he had we'll call it a 3x5, three categories of where he had, 5 or more of something. So not exactly a double-double, but what do we want to call that? A 3x5? Sure, let's call it that. He had at least 5 of each of those categories: 16 points, 8 assists, 6 rebounds. I mean, like, just scrolling through his game log, when's the last time he scored anything like 16 points? He had 17 on March 30th against Detroit. He had 16 on March 19th against New Orleans. So only twice, go all the way back to early February, and he's only had 15 or more points in 2 games since then. Assist-wise, 8 assists for Mike Conley. Mike hasn't had 8 assists. He had 9 against Memphis on April 10th, so a month ago. And he only had one other 8 game with 8 or more assists, going all the way back to, again, the first week of February. And then also you throw in the rebounding. but for him to turn in 16, 8, and 6, and 4 of 6 shooting on threes, overall 5 of 7 from the floor. He made his only 2-point attempt. That's just a phenomenal performance from Conley. And I thought he competed defensively. He was physical enough. He played his, kind of now we're looking at 25 plus or minus minutes. He had 27 for Conley in each game. He had 27 in this game. But he hit some big shots when things were teetering a bit in the first half, and the Wolves wanted to push it into a more comfortable double digits lead, and he had a big 3 in the second half as well. Like, what else can Mike Conley do? Like, that is a fantastic performance and was super important. It has been very important for him to play this well, with Nickeil struggling a little bit, certainly at times with the shot, and then also with turnovers, not in this game necessarily, but in previous games of the series. Without there being a true backup point guard, it's really important that Conley can make open threes, that Conley can initiate offense when Ant is getting relentlessly doubled or Julius Randle is wanting to start off the ball. And Conley did a really good job being the straw that stirs the drink as well. Jaden McDaniels was awesome. 14 points on 14 shots. He missed all 3 of his threes. There were a couple head-scratching moments early, but there was also there was one take in particular that he went right into someone's chest, finished over them, banked it in, could have been a foul call. And it wasn't it was a more physical take than we usually see Jaden have. Like, usually Jaden does the decel and kind of hangs and then leans, or he'll lean and bank it. And, if he gets close enough, he doesn't get fouled all that often. He doesn't dunk on guys that often, although we know he can. He doesn't shoot reverse layups to avoid contact like we've seen Ant and Randle do. McDaniels is typically just I'm going to lean and avoid this contact. He took it into someone's chest. I can't remember who the defender was on the left side of the rim in the first half. And it was such an impressive take. One of my favorite Jaden McDaniels takes. 0 of 3 on threes, but he was 6 of 11 on twos. He had 4 rebounds, 4 steals, 2 assists for Jaden McDaniels, and has just been such a big part as I know weirdly, he scored the least amount of points of any of the Wolves 5 starters in this game, but I think he's been a really important part of their offense on top of what he's done defensively. And we can look at, we talked about Jimmy Butler, let's see, Jaden only actually had 3 fouls. For as many free throws as the Warriors shot, nobody on the Wolves had more than 3 personal fouls. Golden State shot 30 free throws. But he was a big part of forcing Jimmy Butler into a 4 of 11 shooting night. He was a big part of forcing Buddy Hield into a 2 of 9 and 0 of 4 from 3 and 4 turnovers for Buddy Hield. Just a terrible Buddy Hield game. But a very strong performance all the way around from Jaden McDaniels. He continues to just really impress as a true, almost third wheel worthy type offensive player. That's the opportunity we're knocking on, the door we're knocking on here with Jaden McDaniels. Naz Reid was good, not great. He missed both of his 3-point attempts, 8 points, 4 rebounds in 21 minutes. I thought he was good down the stretch, made some good choices after some rough ones in the first half when he was on the floor in place of Gobert late. I thought he was good. DiVincenzo was great. He was easily the bench MVP in this game. 13 points on 5 of 7, 2 of 4 on threes. He was 3 of 3 on twos. Got to the line, 6 assists, 4 steals for Dante DiVincenzo, a couple of rebounds, only 1 turnover, was a +7, which was actually the 3rd best plus-minus mark on the Wolves. This was DiVincenzo's best game, maybe of the playoffs, without going back through all of them. It wouldn't shock me if it was his best game of the playoffs. DiVincenzo was awesome in this game. Naz was good. Nickeil was okay. Just a well-rounded game for Minnesota. The turnovers were an issue. The defensive rebounding was an issue. The fouling was kind of sort of an issue. All things that we've seen that come and go as consistent problems throughout the year. They're all also things that we knew the Warriors would be good at. We came into the series talking about things the Wolves are good at, the Warriors aren't good at, and vice versa. Those things all kind of fall into that category. So we knew they could be problems. It doesn't mean they're going to automatically go away next round. Turns out the competition doesn't get easier. But depending on what that matchup is, it may look a little bit different, and it may make things a little bit easier. Easier is not the right word, but a little bit less difficult, we'll say, for the Wolves to execute better would be the hope. Now, it's never going to be easier when you're going to get up against the Thunder, but the Thunder are a different challenge than the Warriors are, and obviously so are the Nuggets. Okay, that's all for this one. I think that's all we have to say. But again, such an awesome job by the Wolves to get back to the conference finals after an up and down regular season. And I don't want to do too much of the post. It's not a postmortem because this team is not dead. This team is very much alive. the big picture stuff we can save, and we're going to have a couple of shows here before the next series gets underway. So maybe we'll talk a bit more about that, but kudos to Chris Finch and his staff, and obviously Tim Conley in the front office. And, consecutive conference finals is not something that, well, obviously no other Wolves team has done, but it's a pretty unique thing among teams that have not exactly been dynasties, franchises that have never been a dynasty, and the Wolves are not that. But, this is certainly the start of something. And last year was perhaps the start, and maybe this year they could take it at least one step further. And we'll talk about potential conference finals matchups on Friday's show. We'll talk about the potential for, I don't know, I don't want to get too far ahead with finals matchups, but there's some fun storylines there as well. So really, really fun game 5, and kudos to everybody involved with the Wolves on getting them back here to the conference finals. A big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every single day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube, as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you like to listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. You can also watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on Roku and Amazon Fire TV. A reminder that for your second listen, you can check out Locked On NBA Game Night. Every game, every night, until an NBA champion is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find NBA Game Night on Locked On NBA on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Of course, the Locked On Wolves podcast is part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Remember, the Locked On Network is your local experts on all the biggest stories. Once again, I'm Ben Beacon. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast, and we'll catch you next time.